lives. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other.
देवी वसन्ते देवी वसन्ते जय जय पोற்றி நின்றிருவருள் போற்றிமை देवी वसन्ते नारी नरसी சலியாதுழைப்பவளென பூவுலகம் முழுதும் புகழ் கொடி நாட்டிய பூமி அரசர் கொண்டாடமை காட்டிய தேவி வசந்தே நானெனதேனும் அகங்காரமுதலொழிந்தின் நாட்டில் வறியர் எளியர் கடையருடன் வந்து ஞான சமரச சன்மார்க நெறி புகுந்து ஞான சம்மதம் ஒரு மதமென சொல்ல வந்த தேவி வசந்தே உண்மை உணர்வு இலராய் நிழல் தனை கடவுளென மயங்கி போராமை பயமிகுந்து நுண்மதி இழந்து கலாம் செய்யமவர் குயர் நூல்களின் பொருள் தனி தெள்ளென விளக்கிய தேவி வசந்தே ஊனுடல் மறைந்தும் பரந்த உலகிலோர் ஊர்த்தவராது முழங்கு புகழ் கொள்ளும் ஞான ஒளி வடிவோடுயர் நெறியும் சாந்தம் நல்கும் கொள்கையும் பல்லாண்டு செழிக்க எங்கள் தேவி வசந்தே ஜய ஜய போற்றி நின் திருவருள் போற்றிமை தேவி வசந்தே.
I wish you all welcome to this event, which is Besant's birthday on 1st October. Her birth happened 175 years ago. She was born in Ireland, yet for 40 years she regarded India her homeland. That means more than half of her life of 86 years. She passed away in India. Besant had an important role in India's freedom fight, home rule, and also for women's rights and for empowering the education of girls and boys, and many other things. She was one of the founders of Benares Hindu University. She was also among founders of Women's Indian Association and Young Men's Indian Association, YMIA. And this is why today we are happy to have the president of the YMIA, Mr. S. Gurumurthy, as the chief guest. I want at this point to give you our appreciation in the form of 2 books. I mentioned the books first. One is Anya Besant's Struggles and Quest, written by a French writer and researcher, Muriel Pécastin-Boissière. The other is a book on Anya Besant in India, and it was written by C.V. Agarwal together with Pedro Oliveira from Australia. So may I present you these new books? Our guest speaker, Swaminathan Gurumurthy, is popularly known as a writer and journalist in India. He is a chartered accountant by profession and a corporate advisor in high standing. It was interesting to read that he is highly rated for his investigative writings. He has ceaselessly campaigned against corruption at high places. He is the vice chairman of the well-known strategic think tank in Delhi, the Vivekananda International Foundation. Also interesting was to know that the Business Baron magazine rated his knowledge of economics, finance, and accounts as outstanding. For example, Gurumurthy was rated among 50 most powerful persons in India in 1990 by Gentleman's Magazine. The latest rating, there were a lot of ratings in between, but the latest, which I got to know from internet, of course, is from 2017, seeing him as the 30th most powerful person in India. Number 13, 30, 13 most powerful person in India. So as mentioned earlier, Mr. Gurumurthy is the president of Young Men's Indian Association. And that is why he is invited to talk today at this celebration. Many of you may know that each year, members of the YMIA gather at the great banyan tree and walk to the Garden of Remembrance to pay homage to Dr. Anya Besant at her day of passing on 20th September. This is a very respectful gesture. I am pleased to welcome you to deliver us your talk on Rising India. That was Dr. Anya Besant's dream.
Namaskarams to all. I never thought I would be asked to speak before a very select and a very sacred audience on a subject with which I am not too familiar, but with which I am not too unfamiliar also. You know, this is a great institution in the sense that it assembled seekers of truth. The destination of any seeker of truth has always been India. Because the greatest Indian scholars, seers and teachers, philosophers, never defined this is the truth and something else is untrue. It was a civilization, a spiritual tradition, and a way of life which was founded on eternal search for truth, which each individual had to undertake through his or her intense experience. It is an experience-determined spiritual pursuit of truth. This is, if I have to say something about India in the most definite and the most abstract terms, it is this. When I looked at Dr. Besant's life, I found this search for truth as the link between her highly contradictory movement from one system of thought to the other. She started as an evangelist, she became a secular person, then she turned a socialist, then she turned a rebel, and she turned to India, finally. If you see, there is a contradiction and disconnect between different stages of her life. But these are not contradictions. It's actually the route by which the rebellious mind in her was attempting to perceive, understand, and realize truth. And the greatest experimental laboratory in the world for this purpose is India, because it never felt that anyone who thought differently is somebody to be dealt with. You know, I am not a greatly studied person, but I have observed the world. I have tried to interconnect the world, civilizations, in terms of sociology, in terms of even economics and politics. So I would like to share some thoughts with you as to what this country is, because we try to understand this country through textbooks, through libraries, through contemporary newspapers, which will not give you any grand idea about this country. You know, one Professor Ramal, he did a study for 33 years. He belonged to the Hawaii University. He collected the details of violence all over the world, mass violence against people, and he built that website by the name Power Kills. If you have time, you go back and look at that site. It's a very grand attempt to to understand how humans can kill human beings massively. And he estimated that something like 680 people at the minimum and a maximum of 1.2 billion people have been slaughtered in this world in 2,500 years between the 5th century before Common Era until the 20th century. And he has given place-wise, and of course he has collected the details that have appeared all over the world in different researches. And he came to the conclusion that till the 13th century, there was virtually no mass killing in India, except two instances. One was Ashoka's Kalinga War, and the other was Sati. Of course, he adds a footnote that in Sati and Thagi, the number of people who were killed were not even in tens of thousands. But that's not an excuse. But looking at the massive number of manslaughter that the world has witnessed, and India did not, conveys a very powerful message. The entire thing you can relate to one particular tradition in India, that was Tarka Shastra. In Tarka Shastra, you debate everything. And the debate used to be in public. It used to be where millions of people assemble between totally contradictory opinions, between scholars who knew the other person's subject. This is the most important thing. This is called Purva Paksha. I am eligible to talk to another person only if I had studied the subject on which he has come to talk to me. Then I criticize him. I am entitled to criticize another's view only if I had thoroughly studied his subject. And then he can criticize me. It's all happening in front of thousands and thousands of people. And then I agree with him or he agrees with me or we agree to disagree because both of us are still in search of the truth. This tradition was followed very, very vigorously. And in fact, the entire discourse and debate between Buddhism and Hinduism, if it could be called Hinduism at that stage, took place on this platform. And you know, of course, it's a story which many people know. The debate took place under most congenial circumstances. And the most exemplary example of this is the Adi Shankara Mandana Mishra debate, where two giants were reflecting within the same thought system of Sanatana Dharma, which is the more appropriate way in which Adi Shankara was a young man, almost a boy, and Mandana Mishra was a great scholar. And he goes in search of Mandana Mishra. And Mandana Mishra is stunned that a young boy wants to have a debate with him. But he doesn't deny him the right to debate. He says, who are you? I am so big. I am so well recognized. No. So the debate is decided. Who is the umpire? And what is the stake? If Adi Shankara wins and Mandana Mishra loses, Mandana Mishra should become a sannyasin. And if Shankara loses, he should become a grahastha. This was the stake involved. Their entire life will undergo a change. And who is the umpire? Mandana Mishra's wife. And you know, even she feels that she is not competent enough to make a judgment. And she proposes a self-evaluation model. The model was that she puts fresh garland around both. And says, whose garland loses the freshness will indicate the man has got angry because the body temperature increases. If you got angry, you have lost your debate. So she proposed a self-determinant model. And of course, you know the story afterwards. You know, she herself wants to have a debate with him after Mandana Mishra loses. Why I want to mention this is that this country has a mysterious and great tradition of resolving disputes without exchanging blows. That's why great men were attracted to India. Now we have a gross world, a world, a meaningless present, where quarterly results and overnight interest rate decides the mood of nations, leaders, finance ministers, companies, to which we are all hooked. I am a corporate advisor, I know. There is a termist. Now you look at Annie Besant from what the world today is and the world view which attracted her to India. She came to spend her life here, not 1 quarter, not 1 year, not 1 decade. You know, she even said when the Banaras University was being founded, I don't want a university which will produce scholars, which will produce students who will be fit for 40 or 50 rupees salaries. Of course, in those days, 40 or 50 rupees was a big amount. Today, you prepare students, you prepare youth, you prepare scholars, whose value is determined by the income that they earn. You know, when I went to IIT Bombay and spoke on a very complicated subject of India's rise in 2010, at that time, nobody thought India would rise. When I said much of the teaching in India does not present before them what is India. You know, I was talking to the IIT Management School, Shailendra Mehta Management School, where I said I asked them only one simple question. Which is the place which has the highest per capita income in India? I said it is not Bombay, it's not Delhi, it's not Calcutta, it's not Chennai, it's not Bangalore, it's not Hyderabad. Please tell me which place it is. A highly learned audience of IIT professors, scholars, many businessmen had also come for that meeting, and students. Everybody was silent. It is a place called Morbi in Gujarat. That has the highest per capita income in India. A language which is least spoken in that place is English. And the total population of that place is 4 lakhs. 60% of the people are employed. 1,200 ceramic factories. 1,000 textile units. 900 diamond cutting units. Once in a dam burst, it was wiped out. Koina dam burst. And in 2001, in the earthquake, it was flattened. That's the will of the people there. And 20% of that population is entrepreneurial. In fact, many of you know, if you had any business people who have any touch with them, you ask them. That is the only place which does not buy goods on credit. They pay advance money and buy. It's a culture of that place. So I told them about Ludhiana, Batala, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Morbi, right down to Thoothukudi. I went to about 34, 35 industrial clusters in my study to understand what will be the impact of globalization on India. And I found the entrepreneurial strength in India is so high. India is not an employer-employee country. 70% of the Indians are self-employed. That is why communism and capitalism could not take root in this country, because they both want employer and employees. Communism cannot survive without employees, and capitalism cannot take roots without employers. But in India, you find an employer is also an employee. The whole family works. You know, it's a very different format. She came to understand this. Because she went through this route. She was not just a philosopher. She started as a believer. Then she started questioning that belief. Then she wanted to find an alternative, because seeing the world at that time, capitalism was rising in a big way and dominating England as well as the rest of the world through colonialism. And she had no understanding of India. She was told that the Britishers have come to civilize India. It is the white people's burden to civilize the world on their terms, on their model, on their image, on their literature, on their language. So when she came, one of her first remarks was, they have not come here to civilize India, they have come to enslave India. You know, researchers have come now. You know, in 1978, one Indian economist by name Professor Raj Krishna, he was one of the advisors to the government, was very well regarded, a socialist economist. He was asked a question, how is it that all socialist countries are progressing faster than India, though India is a socialist country? He gave a very simple answer. No, whatever policies you may follow, India will have only Hindu rate of growth. Hindus are incapable of growing. This was not his view. This was the view of two great men. One, Max Weber. He studied the socio-economic model of the West, and he studied the difference between Catholic and Protestant societies and found the Protestant societies are moving forward and progressing faster than the Catholic societies because of the freedom that is inherent in Protestant society. And Catholic society puts a restriction on individual's freedom. Individual freedom is necessary for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is necessary for capitalism. And capitalism is necessary for growth. So he formulated a simple policy that Protestant work ethic is the foundation for modern capitalism. Nothing wrong, because he studied it for nearly 2 decades to come to this conclusion. But suddenly he wrote 2 books. One, The Religion of Hinduism, and another book, The Religion of Buddhism. He never came to India, never met any Indian, discussed with any worthwhile scholars, but he wrote these 2 books. In each he concluded, 2 nations will never come up in this world. One is India, the other is China, because both believe in karma and rebirth. If you believe in karma and rebirth, you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe in self-effort, because everything is predetermined. This is the basis on which for 70 years, even today, the social sciences in India are taught till today. Then Karl Marx wrote a couple of articles in 1854 in the New York Herald Tribune, which is called the International Herald Tribune. And he said, and he was fighting against the capitalist rise, and he said, when subject of India came, he said, it's a very peculiar country. In this country, every village is a republic, it's a self-contained economy. A village hardly needs anything from the outside. And there is no difference. The producers and consumers are so interlinked, there is no exploitation. He called it primitive socialism. But there is a problem with this society. 2000 years it has not changed. And they are semi-barbarians worshipping monkeys and cows. When you look at India from outside, it will look a semi-barbaric society. But to understand the truth, it requires a much greater capacity to investigate. And she came to India. She came from probably the most powerful and economically well-defined nation, England, and came. And India was dirty, India was poverty-ridden, India had all kinds of complications. But she understood the soul of India. I'll tell you, 3 great people had one date aligning them. And all of them spoke in the same language, understood India in the same way, saw the rise of India in the same way. One was, of course, Dr. Annie Besant, who came to India in 1893. And in that first visit, she addressed 121 meetings. And she so readily understood India as if she had a previous connect with it. And in 1893, Vivekananda goes to America. And Aurobindo comes to India. In 1893, 3 independent, seemingly unrelated, but converging incident of nation builders takes place. And all of them spoke almost in the same language. The Hindu civilizational foundation of India is the basis for India's rise. Swami Vivekananda shook the West. All of you know that. Everybody forgot. In the West, everybody forgot the World Parliament of Religions in 1893 took place. You go to the Harvard website. Harvard Religious Pluralism Project was started in 1994. You go to that website. They said for 100 years we have forgotten what Swami Vivekananda had said. Because for 100 years the world suppressed religion. Ideologies dominated, material ideologies, political ideologies, fascism, Nazism, communism. The greatest killings took place in this period. Nearly 450 million people were killed in this period. The rise of ideologies. So, the Harvard Pluralism Project said, what Swami Vivekananda said, that we must take the best from all traditions and build a common religion for the world, and that we have missed. I don't think any Indian is even aware of it. So there is a vacuum in the world. Families are collapsing. 55% of the first marriages end in divorce. 67% of the second marriages end in divorce. If anybody has some desire left, 74% of the third marriages end in divorce in America. Nobody can stop it. Because you have aroused such forces. Once the genes are out of the bottle, you can never bring it back, because the human desires have been let loose anarchically. There is no thought system, there is no law, there is no leader, there is no force which can control this. The control has to come from within, and that is the message of India. So Annie Besant said what? It would have been politically very unwise to state what Annie Besant said about India. And I want to quote her. After a study of some 40 years and more of the great religions of the world, I find none so perfect. It's a dirty religion. Semi-barbaric religion. Semi-barbaric people, when you look from outside. After 40 years of investigation, she comes to this conclusion. None so perfect, none so scientific, none so philosophical, none so spiritual, that the great religion known by the name Hinduism. Make no mistake, without Hinduism, India has no future. Hinduism is the soil into which the roots of India are stuck. And torn out of that, she will inevitably wither as a tree torn out from its place. And if the Hindus do not maintain Hinduism, who shall save it? If indigenous rule, to talk about Hinduism as a demeaning thing. This is how we started the post-independent journey. Jawaharlal Nehru, a great man who had such enormous comprehension of the world, even said Hindu communalism. He said if there is any communalism, it is only Hindu communalism. No other communalism is there in India. So there was a heavy baggage against which the Indian civilization was fighting. But many people do not know. It is actually the judiciary which rescued Hinduism. There was a case in Chennai of a very important business family. And in that family, one Brahmin family, and in that one of the sons married a German Christian. And the child born out of the German Christian was called Nicholas Sundaram. So the question came before the court whether Nicholas Sundaram and Nicholas Sundaram's mother was a Christian and Nicholas Sundaram's father, Sundaram, constituted a Hindu undivided family. The court said yes, they constitute a Hindu undivided family. Because the idea of Hinduism does not limit itself to any particular way of worship. A Christian can be a Hindu, a Muslim can be a Hindu, an irreligious person can be a Hindu. It quoted the Encyclopedia Britannica to say, the core of the religion does not even depend on the existence or non-existence of God, or whether there is one God or many. Encyclopedia Britannica is a multi-scholarly effort at the global level, which was taken by the Supreme Court in 1976. And it gave this decision. It was a constitutional bench decision. This was taken by the Supreme Court in 1995 to say, when the word Hindutva came in politics and it was all communal, Supreme Court said, who said it is communal? It cannot be communal. So they said Hindutva is equal to the ethos, culture, way of life of India, and it cannot be reduced to a simple religion. A religion means a founder, a particular way of worship, and saying the other way of worship is wrong. Unless today's definition of religion is, unless a religion says another way of worship is wrong, it is not a religion. If a religion accepts all ways of worship, it's not a religion. It's something higher than religion. This is what has kept us together. You know, in my life I can never forget an instance where I went to a tribal village and they asked me to pray their God. So I wanted to put a question to the tribal leader. Sir, I worship some other God. Will your God accept me, sir? He accepts all. I pray in Tamil. Will he understand Tamil? Sir, he knows all languages. A distant, quarantined, tribal village people have this attitude. It's a mysterious country. This mystery was understood by Annie Besant. That's why she put it in such plain terms. What she said then, the Supreme Court accepted now. You must understand the vision, why India is growing, why there is pride in India now. You know, simply for wearing this tikka, I was called unmodern. I am useless for the modern world. And you know, I am a fairly very well recognized corporate consultant in India. There is not a single big corporate which has not taken my advice at some point or the other. But that is in India. When I go out of India, I am an Indian chartered accountant. The brand of India will decide the respect for me. An Ugandan chartered accountant, however great he is, Uganda's brand will decide. This is the world. You must understand the world goes by branding. We had debranded India. We are rebranding it now. Now you understand the shift that has taken place in the last 20 years, 25 years, unbelievable. In the last 7-8 years is even more unbelievable. Unless you link people who have struggled for it, who have seen the seeds of India as a rising power which can guide the world. And she is one of the greatest persons who came from outside, understood India, rerouted herself. But not many people know about her. You know, when I was chosen as the president of Vivekananda, the YMIA, you know, I ran a magazine called Tughlaq. So a reader asked me, what have you to do with Young Men's Association? I said, this is an organization run by the old for young. We have become like that. Because we have not taken this message, we are politically correct. If you are politically correct, you cannot understand Vivekananda, you cannot understand Annie Besant, you cannot understand Aurobindo. We must have the intellectual courage to speak about their core thought. When we say all these religions are accepted by one religion, that is not a religion. That's something higher. We need that confidence. If we have, otherwise we will be holding meetings, a beautiful hall, an atmosphere where we all want something good to happen, but nothing will happen unless we stand by the thoughts, core thoughts of Dr. Annie Besant. You know, the more and more I studied these people, of course I have not studied as much as I should have. I studied Vivekananda and Aurobindo a little more than I have studied Dr. Annie Besant. I must study her more. And these books that you have given will be very helpful. I am thankful to you. And I have been visiting this institution. The last time I had a very long discussion with Dr. Radha Bania, who was the president of the institution at that time. In fact, I used to relate to her very frequently. And I am happy that I could reconnect and share my thoughts with you today. Thank you very much.
Very many thanks for your uplifting and energizing words and views. And in our program, we have now words from our president. I need to say a few words. He was an honors graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Affairs. He joined the TS in 1974, serving in many functions in the TS and also in Theosophical Order of Service. He has conducted many humanitarian actions. Being the president here at Adyar, many improvements has taken place, keeping the campus a livable sanctuary for peaceful and mindful life. Now I give the word to Tim Boyd.
I'm going to be brief in my comments. I think I would like for the brilliant address by Brother Gurumurthy to be the thing that lingers in your minds. My purpose here on this particular day is to celebrate the memory of this person, Annie Besant, who we all recognize as someone who has been great in a number of spheres of human activity. We've heard about the greatness of her thought and the lasting impact of her presence on the Indian nation. And that's something that will be a lasting tribute to the life that she spent. Annie Besant has been described in a number of different ways. At the time of her death, the person who took on the position of president of the TS eulogized her in the words of her as being a warrior. She fought for things, and I don't in any way deny the correctness of that opinion. From my particular point of view, I have tended to look at Annie Besant as, above and beyond all other things, a builder, someone who built things. And the range of things which she touched with this consciousness of construction was quite wide. Anybody who has been involved in building anything, from a small wall to this building, knows that the all-important aspect is its foundation. Without a proper foundation, nothing rises for long. And any builder of any responsibility and any scope of imagination necessarily looks to the future. It's not enough to have a pretty structure that'll be useless 5, 10, 15 years from now. So the future has to be the guiding light of anyone of vision, which Annie Besant was by anyone's account, a visionary. She was exceptional in many, many ways. As was noted, she was a person who by birth was born into a Christian community and was an evangelical Christian. But the problem for Annie Besant, which also was her strength, was that her mind was so active that she asked questions. In her examination, she found she couldn't get the answers that she asked for. She went to the highest people in her church, in her religion, to ask for answers because she wanted to believe. But upon finding that those answers were not forthcoming, she took what is a very brave step for anyone: to step away from a community of belief that has been the basis of her support, the focus of her living. She was willing to step away because answers were not there. She moved into a secular life. She moved into atheism. From atheism, she transferred her beliefs to socialism because she saw in that movement of thought an ideal for human community. I would say it was not because of the faults or the incorrectness of the view of socialism that the community must be the basis and the source of political and social organization. She moved away from it not because the ideals were incorrect, but because the building blocks required for its foundation were wanting. Those building blocks being individual human beings like you and like me. She noted that the thing that prevented such a grand vision from coming to be a reality was in fact the individual selfishness that socialism or any other particular mental approach to human organization could not speak to. It was inadequate to the task. And it was at this time that she first found her way to this ageless wisdom tradition, Theosophy. In this, she saw the basis for a life's work. And in her embrace of this, and she didn't embrace anything halfway. She wasn't a person of half measures. In her embrace of this ageless wisdom approach, she could see that even though it was a very long-range vision, it was a future that extended beyond her lifetime, beyond many lifetimes, but that it was the only certain path toward the ideal of cooperative, communal, constructive life, not only in India, but any place where human beings exist. That this particular approach was something that was worthy of committing a lifetime of effort to. That's what brought her to India. She came to India because of the work she had to do in cultivation of the means for individuals to connect themselves more deeply with the binding spirit that connects all of us together. That was her purpose in coming here. Again, Annie Besant being Annie Besant, her mind was open. She didn't come to impose some preformed idea. She came here to learn. And in that learning, she became what she would describe as a daughter of India. She didn't deny that she was a person of Irish descent brought up in the British community, but the overwhelming focus of her intelligence was molded by this motherhood, fatherhood of this place and of the many things that Brother Gurumurthy has just been speaking to us about. That though it's a long, winding road, the individual grains of sand, you can't build a house on that. But if you put these grains of sand together and they're concreted in stone, you build a structure that is sure and that is lasting. And that was what she committed herself to. Again, as a builder with a vision to the future, she was very well aware that even though time will ultimately bring us to this vision of our connection to our spiritual essence, time will do that, but also institutions were created to foster this understanding. She recognized, much as Gandhi said, to a hungry man, a piece of bread is the face of God. That before such a thing could take place, people needed to be fed, people needed to be educated, and she set up schools. Not just for the chosen few. Schools for women were a focus of her activity. She set up the Young Men's India Association, along with other like minds, in order to train and to develop the future citizens of an India that did not yet exist. India as a nation was still something that was living in the imagination of those who could see beyond colonial rule. She saw, and every activity she took today was toward that day which had yet come during her lifetime. She was a builder. Schools, institutions, religious outlooks. And she was one of the key builders also in this thing that we come to accept and live within that we call the nation of India. So, my function again, merely to remind. It's a wonderful thing to think about great people. There are few who have this sort of remembrance 190 or 100 years after their death. You know, why do we remember someone that long? We don't remember our grandparents. The next generation doesn't even know who they were. But because of the touch of love made visible, great people are remembered. If we're really going to remember her, there are many ways she could be eulogized, many things you could say about her. We started this meeting with words that she penned. 4 lines that we repeated when this meeting began, which she wrote, which give a deeper vision into who she was and her method of operating and the benefits that flowed from that. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, was the first line. For anyone with the capacity to see that and to live from that basis, it affects your behaviors. O hidden light, shining in every creature, not just in Indian creatures or American or animals or even humans. There is a light, whether you want to call it divine, universal, omnipresent, shining to those who cultivate within themselves the capacity to see it. It doesn't exist so long as we're blind. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. And then she closes with the statement, may each who feels themselves as one with thee, with the divine, know they are one with every other. Why was there less killing in India? Each who feels himself as one knows you're one with every other. Her epitaph, which she wrote for herself, was short and was to the point. Annie Besant asked that her epitaph be, she tried to follow truth. She tried. And that's the most that any of us can do, to try. I would like to thank all of you for joining in this remembrance. These sorts of moments are powerful. And at this point, I think I have to turn it over to whom for a song. Thank you.
Mano buddhyahankara chitta तानि नाहं न च श्रोतजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं 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 चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंयो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं 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 चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्.
This event is over, except we can offer flowers whoever wants. Thank you for participating.